for the ACA to pursue for various folks that, ACA instructors. And I want to give a big shout out to Aaron. I'll introduce it invigorated a big conversation about the role of systemic racism and structural oppression that affects Black access or marginalized, hardly reached communities' access to paddle sports and outdoor recreation. And so this working group was born out of that, talking about and exploring that and how the ACA's role. And so the people that are a part of this working group thus far is Aaron. And Aaron, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Erin, and I'm just realizing my daughter's name is up on the screen, but I'm Erin. Thanks, Jerry. I'll change that.
Yeah, I was like, oh. So, Erin, did you want to share anything about yourself or?
Sure, I'm Erin. I actually live in Mexico. I am a sea kayaking instructor. And I see Jim Tabinski in here, so I just want to say hi because Jim was one of my first instructors. So it's just nice to see so many people coming together to have these conversations and hopefully really do some stuff. So thank you guys.
And then next up, that's part of this group as well is Heather Miller. She's an ACA board member. And Heather, if you want to say something, hey. Introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, sorry I'm late. Thank you all for joining. I am new-ish to the ACA board, but really interested in helping to steward along our DEI efforts and appreciate everyone's engagement and commitment to this.
And then next up, we have our rock, Kelsey. She's the ACA staffer. She's an ACA staffer, and she's been really helping incubate or really working on like some of the more how can we make this programmatic to the ACA, if that makes sense, and she's been really just a great support. So Kelsey, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, good evening. As Jerry said, my name is Kelsey, and I've been with the ACA for almost 10 years now, and it is my sincere delight to work with motivated people and lend whatever those 10 years of worth of connections have given me just to further all these efforts here. It means an awful lot, so thank you for letting me be involved.
Awesome. So that's the active working group, right? I'm not forgetting anybody, am I? And again, I'm just glad for y'all to be here. This is a conversation that many outdoor recreation communities have had this year. For me, this is really important as a Black man, realizing, that we have all these awesome public spaces and water, and we need everyone, the people that live around our lands we need to be diverse, and that's really important. And so I'm just glad. I'm not happy about the things that have happened this year, but I'm happy that we can use this moment to make something beautiful out of it. So that's our intros. So next up, we want to talk about talk about feedback from the virtual session, and I guess you can digitally raise your hand on here. Who was able to attend? I've never used the hand feature on Zoom. I think there's
how about we just raise our hands on the screen?
There you go. Right. Yeah, I was trying to be all millennial and savvy, but I know there's a way you can digitally raise your hand like that.
Hey, how'd you do that thumb thing?
Tom Brady hasn't lost many battles, and he's winning his fight against the clock.
Hey, James,
down the bottom.
The TV. James, turn off the TV. Yeah. Anyway, how'd you do that thumbs up?
I don't know.
On the reactions, down on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
And if you go into settings, you can change the color of the thumb. You can change the color.
So it seems like a lot of people were able to attend this session. So I guess like Aaron, if you want to help me like figure out or like jump into this and to talking about the feedback from the session.
I'd just like to say I'm Lee Reiser. I just came in on the meeting. I'm the ACA Director of Recreation Promotion for the Atlantic Division. I work with Jerry Dunn.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. So we've already gotten some great feedback. We've got some fantastic critical feedback, things to do better in the future, things to work on, people to connect with. So to everybody who reached out to us either individually or through the ACA, thank you so much. We're also going to be sending out a survey, a follow-up survey, either tonight or tomorrow, I believe, to help get more feedback. So if you don't want to pitch in your ideas here, that's fine. You're going to have a way to do that. And also, yes. So anyway, we will just spend a little bit of time doing some like roses and thorns, if anyone is familiar. If anyone has anything good to say or critical to say about the session itself, that would be really helpful and it'll help us to better organize future conversations. So if anyone wants to jump in, please.
I got a question.
Sure.
I got a question. I'll jump in. This is Mark Alio from Rhode Island, everybody. Sorry if my internet connection is unstable, but I'd like to ask Aaron, is there some kind of committee leadership to this DEI group? Is there, a task force? Are we all on the task force? Maybe you could speak to how this is being organized.
Sure. Jerry, did you want to speak to that? Or Heather?
Yeah, I can. So at current, it's an unofficial working group. So it's not, an official ACA group. It's just an unofficial working group. And our hope through this is that we can get more people to join us. So there's been about 4 to 5 people actively involved with it. And we really need more support to help grow and incubate it and turn it into something tangible, whether it be programming, messaging, resource finding, things like that.
Well, there's 38 people on this call. How are you going to organize it? Who's doing the work?
Right. So right now the group is pretty informal, but the goal is to have a formal board committee that advises and can provide input to the board of how we can direct staff and resources to kind of get things done. So right now we're still trying to just gauge interest to see who might be able to have capacity to join a work group to actually do work, because as Jerry and Aaron said, there's only 4 or 5 of us and we can't do everything, and we don't want to do everything, can't speak for everyone. So we just need to figure out who's interested and then figure out what we're going to do. And once we have a better idea of the size of the group, then we can figure out like how we're going to organize and actually set up some structures for governance and actually relay information back and forth between the board and staff and members.
That's good.
Yeah, and like I think like this jumps into like I think part of that process is learning about the good, bad, and ugly of the virtual session and getting people's thoughts, because like that was kind of the first step in doing this is to hear from people what they're doing on the ground and their perspectives. So I want to jump into that and don't think that I'm not going to try to be rude, but we want it for time's sake. Meetings I've run, I try to say get like at least let's think like maybe like 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes for response. And I'm going to set like a timer on my phone. So if I say like, okay, thank you, just know I'm not being rude, but just for time's sake. And so we hear from everybody. So anyone want to jump in and go and, share your piece.
I tried to review it today when Kelsey had sent out the take a survey. I said, well, maybe I ought to go back and see what others said and what I said that I didn't want to say, and it was not there. I downloaded something that wouldn't start. Has anybody else tried to go back and watch the session?
And it was processing like right when I sent that out. So my apologies that I did those so close to one another. But also Zoom cannot record 10 different breakout rooms at once. So there's a large chunk missing from the middle of the recording. So there was the intro and there was the end, but all the breakout rooms, I was not able to record the discussions in all 10 of those. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, I'll say something that just a couple of comments that I said in the breakout room, but I think having some kind of structure is important because everybody's time is valuable and everybody's voice should be heard, but we also have to have a means for collecting that input and putting something together that allows us to move forward in a meaningful and practical way. So one of the things that I would just like to say in this forum is that, you know, there are some existing ACA structures like the state director structure and the board of directors and the staff. And we all know that the staff is stretched. It's a scarce resource situation. So I think that, you know, it's good to have a task force. It's clearly this organization is non-diverse, and I think it's very important that we work in a grassroots kind of way to tap in, to raise the profile of ACA and to do significant grassroots outreach and marketing so that the name and the identity becomes better known and that the programming can be integrated into the various states and localities so that we can encourage more diverse membership and more diverse partnerships and alliances that will allow us to become ultimately a more diverse organization.
Thank you, Mark.
I would agree with Mark on organization. And one of the things I got from our breakout groups is how absolutely diverse in another way we are in terms of resources, challenges, etc. I'm with the Atlantic Division, which is the metro area, as is Siobhan and my husband, Jerry. And we actually have a lot going on, but we're not organized about it in a cohesive way. So we may have 20 clubs, 15 of whom are doing outreach programs to the public of different types. But what we need to do, and I can do part of this because is to gather what we're doing. So at least we know the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, and then market it and put it on the website so people can find it. And then the other thing to do is to be able to talk to each other about what this group is doing, what that group is doing, because we have some big successes, but the folks out in Seattle don't have the opportunity to learn from the things that work, or we've tried things that didn't work and we can't share that. So I think a lot of what we need to do is to gather what we are doing, organize it, and then share it with other folks in meaningful ways, and then market it as well. My 2 cents, which is good for me because it's usually 45 cents.
I just want to add to that just 2 things. One is that the clubs are where the ACA does its real grassroots work. And the clubs are doing things. We got like 4 or 5 people here from Yonkers Canoe and Paddling Club on the Hudson River. And we got Ann and I from Sebago. So the New York City clubs are doing things. They're doing different things. Like Ann says, the divisions or the state directors or the national office can just put up a portal where we can say what we're doing, what works, what we tried, and what we didn't work. The other thing is we talked about diversity, is diversity in the water. In the metropolitan areas like New York City, our waterways are close to neighborhoods of color. Both the Yonkers Canoe Club was here represented, and our club was on Jamaica Bay. We're in neighborhoods of color. The actual club is it. You get to the lakes and the lakeside and the river folks. Most of those waterside access are in high income areas. So we have a very different profile across the country. We have clubs that are already in inner city neighborhoods on the water in metropolitan areas. And then we have the river and lakefront folks where that's the high expensive neighborhoods, where there isn't access from the communities of color. So those are just two very different things.
Well, thank you for that. I want to elevate some things that have been going on in the chat. So John said, Rose, breakout rooms were great for getting conversation started and allowed more time to talk in smaller groups. Thorn, there was not a good transmission of what happened from the breakout groups to larger discussion. We only made it through 4 or 5 of the breakout groups to share their ideas. And then he said, Bud, I'm loving this for flower talk. Bud, it is great to get this conversation started and have it taking place at the national conference. It is a great step of many that will be taken as an organization. Pre-designating a leader in each virtual group will help keep the groups more on task and add some better organization. So that's some feedback from John. Jerry said, I thought this session was to finish the business of the first session and that we were not able to hear all the feedback from all the breakout sessions. In addition to breakout sessions, we didn't have opportunity to hear from all the persons in that session. The little that was discussed was interesting and useful. We need more opportunity to communicate between each other. So Aaron, Heather, what are y'all thoughts? Your thoughts on that?
This is just a technological thing. We weren't able to capture the email addresses of everyone who was at the ACA session. And there might be people here with us tonight who were not at that session, but are here and would like to have the survey and would like to have follow-up from this. If everyone can just, in the chat, just write your email address that you're okay with sharing, or you can send it to me privately if you don't want to share it with the entire group. If you could do that within the course of this conversation tonight, I will make sure that you get the survey and any follow-up from this. Thank you.
I want to make one other point that I made in the breakout room, which might be echoing Jerry's point a little bit, which is we're a paddling organization. And I think one of the major barriers to membership, as well as more interaction and involvement with our organization, is particularly in the minority community, is the issue having to do with the capability of swimming. And I think that this is a particular issue in the African American community, perhaps the Latino community as well, and that it's a significant barrier if we want to increase involvement, particularly with stronger alliances and partnerships with groups in localities like the YMCA and the school systems and so forth. We must take a step forward in trying to mitigate the fear associated with paddling and being a water-based activity and getting more people involved who may not necessarily know how to swim or have access to that type of training. And I'm very high on the paddling safety program that ACA came out with. And I think that's a perfect example of a tool that could be marketed and is quite valuable to community groups. And if we could do something about that and roll that out in an organized way, I think that would be a tremendous asset to this initiative.
Thank you, Mark. I think I saw Lee earlier and I think I interrupted him. Lee, you had something to say, right?
Yes. What I had to say was, like, we sort of have a head start in, with dealing with minorities, and I think a lot of the clubs have embraced diversity, and so might be over the course of the winter, might be good to put together a list of these clubs, and everyone can talk to the principals, the members of the board and so forth, and maybe get some ideas.
Any others, some folks we haven't heard from? Any thoughts, any continuing thoughts from the session? Don't be shy, y'all.
I've got some thoughts. Can I talk?
Sure.
Okay. My name is Dave Lumian, and I am an ACA instructor trainer, kayaking. I'm an instructor for stand-up paddleboarding. I'm also a sailing instructor too. And I thought the thing that we did last week was really good. It got everybody talking. There seemed like there was a lot of interest. That was all real positive. I agree, some of the feedback, there wasn't enough time for every group to report out. That's unfortunate, but I still think it was overall very, very positive. I think what we need to look at is what are the next steps for ACA. And I think I made a list of them, and I just want to go down them real quick. One is a diversity inclusion statement. I think it should be brought together. I think we should, or a group of this group should survey existing statements. There's a lot of work that's been done on this. I did one 15 years ago for the United States Sailing Association. We had a thing called the Community Sailing Council, and we came up with a statement. It was then adopted by the organization as a whole. And what I did was I went out and looked at other NGBs, other national governing bodies of different sports, and also interviewed some of the staff to find out how they're implementing their statements. And that was very, very good. There's been a lot of good work that's gone on. At the time, I was particularly impressed with the US Tennis Association. They actually had, it seemed like one of the strongest programs going on to try to diversify tennis. Secondly, I think once we have a diversity statement, we should come up with a diversity action plan. How are we going to try to implement this? Some parts of an action plan could be to develop a community paddling council. I think there's a lot of groups that are out there that are outside of ACA that are doing paddling on a less competitive, less high level than what we're involved with. I think we should try to let some of those groups know that we're here, we want to support them. I think particularly the paddle safety facilitator program is really excellent, and we might meet a lot of their needs. I think also
Dave,
we need to look at, yes?
I was going to say, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to say like what you're saying is really great, and they're like really great higher level stuff. And I think that that's what this group is trying to do. And so I think like we should keep talking about save some of these like higher level programs, program talk for like, if that makes sense. We can put that in the, if that makes sense.
Can I finish up my comments, or is my time up?
You can finish your comments.
Okay, let me just finish it really quickly. So an action plan, I think also imaging is really important. We need to look at, I think if people don't see themselves doing something, they don't think that there's a welcome sign for them. And I think diversifying that is very important. We should figure out, maybe have a photo contest or something, have people send in stuff that we can put up on our websites, because there are a lot of people. I run a program in Marina Del Rey, which ACA gave a award to last year, that has 500 kids from the Boys and Girls Club out paddling and sailing every year. I think partnerships is very smart. I think that highlighting existing programs and their successes, because a lot of us around the country are doing stuff already. I think that's also very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I think Carla had her hand raised. Carla.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, we had.
Oh, can you hear me?
TVCC. Nope. Okay. Who's supposed to be talking?
Carla started talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can folks hear me? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Faintly.
Yes. Okay. Yay. Okay. Yeah, I'm having weird rural access issues. So, and also hearing myself echoed. So that's a little strange too. I think it's really important to partner with outdoor educators of color who are already connected with their communities and already engaged in the work of getting the next generation really appreciative of waterways and the natural world. And it would just be fabulous to get more of these folks certified as paddling instructors, so they're already in a position to bring their community, you know, in to waterways and to boating.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you. Anybody else? Like, I think there was someone that was talking to earlier.
Yeah. Well, I'm with TVCC in Tennessee, and we have discussed how to approach minorities and how to attract their, their inclusion. And we haven't figured out how to do it. Apparently, we haven't succeeded yet. We'd love to have instructions for that. What's the best way to approach minorities, both Hispanic and Black?
Yeah. Chad has
Marie?
his hand up.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm new to this group, but Dave Lumian and I work together as sailing instructors, and he's been, I've known about you for a while, but I just now have the time to get involved. And I've been on diversity, equity, inclusion groups for sailing, U.S. sailing and other groups. And what, David, your comment is what made me think of a response for the group, is that, as Carla also said, that we need more instructors of color. And I think when you have more certified instructors representing different groups, it'll make it much easier to draw new people to your chapter.
I agree with that, and I would love to be able to, but you have to kind of start at the bottom and work your way up.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've done in sailing has been outreach to, for example, I'm really big in like women's groups, and women who would never get on a sailboat. We've had like a really fun time, but it's a matter of having like an open house, targeting certain groups, having like a fun day, doing some instruction, getting their feet wet, having a little education beforehand, how they're not going to, drown and whatnot. But aligning with groups that already exist. And because, as you know, a lot of people of color don't necessarily trust that they're going to be accepted.
Okay.
There you go. But yeah, wonderful initiative though. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Next up, I think there is Chev.
Hello guys, how are you? Yeah, I think, it's representation. It's just having people that look like yourself, but also understand your circumstances and your situations that you're going through, that you can connect with, and that will help you, to come into the sport and want to go. We also have to think about the road to becoming an instructor. We're saying that we want, local people to become instructors, but you have to understand there's a cost with that. And the people who are going to connect with their community might not have the money to pay for the instructorship, right? So we have to come up with a plan. How are we going to recruit people? Not recruit them, how are we going to find a way to fund instructor certification classes so that they can become leaders? And then they can go into their communities and start doing the necessary work. But if we're not thinking the financial implications or the financial impact that we need to have, or that the ACA needs to come up with a plan to help, we're not going anywhere with this. What we're dealing with is, one person, I can use myself. I had somebody that was willing to pay for my lessons and my instructions. So I was able to go learn, help my friends get certified as well, and come back to a community and help local kids and local people get there. Most people don't have that situation. It's the ACA's job to come up with a comprehensive plan of how they're going to get money together. Maybe it's going to be a situation where they have to apply for grants, but we have to talk funding, how you're going to fund the local people, and how you're going to get them out there.
Well, we actually, We actually fund like 5 or 6 instructors. We would love to fund minority instructors, but we don't have anybody that applies.
I just want to jump in there and say something really fast about that.
At the bottom of the pool, so we can get people to fund as instructors. We would love to be able to do that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, who's trying to talk?
Part of
Sorry.
the
Andrea
sharing
Nepper?
that you can't find folks.
Andrea, can you go?
Yeah. So I'm with Chicago Adventure Therapy, and there's a couple thoughts I'm having as I listen to people talk. One is that we work primarily with young people in Chicago. Most of the young people we work with are people of color. And when I hear people saying, well, we don't know where to find people of color are everywhere. It's not like
that's true.
They're invisible. They're everywhere. Our organization works with other youth serving organizations in the city. And so it means we haven't had to like go say, hey, if you're a person of color, come work with us. We're working with organizations that are already working with the community, and then we provide the paddling. And over a decade working with them, we have learned that we really need to listen to what they're interested in, where they need to go, try to amplify their voices. And there's a couple things that have happened because of that. One of which is that we have, as Chev was saying, we have footed the bill for a number of people, young people in our organization, to become certified paddle sport coaches. And for many, many years, actually, we have had in our ranks the youngest paddle sport coach in the country. Unfortunately, it's not through ACA, so probably most people wouldn't be aware of them, but we have a lot of young people who we are making sure that they get certified as coaches. If that's something that they want to do, you have to be involved with them first. You have to be offering things that they're interested in. And some years we have young people who want to be coaches, and some years we have young people who want to go paddle somewhere outside of Chicago. And, what are they interested in? Amplify their voices, follow their lead. And then the last part of that is that we've really, in that move for trying to make sure to build leadership among young people. We've worked at building leadership on the water. We've worked at helping young people become coaches. And we've also worked really hard at diversifying the leadership of our organization. So I'm the founder of the organization. I'm a white woman. The beginning of our organization, the leadership was all white. Still, the most senior leadership is still white, but we aren't all white. We have people of color who are part of our staff who are helping to push this forward. And I think that's really important. We can't, as Chev was saying, you got to have people who look like people who you are inviting to participate. And I think that's important as coaches, and also important in the leadership of any organization that's trying to do this.
I agree. I 100% agree with that.
I want to hop in there and say something. Let me try to articulate it in the right way. I liked what Chev and Andrea said. So quite often, like outdoor recreation, when it deals with people of color, there's a kind of like a savior complex mentality that comes in. That's like, oh, we need to take the Black children, the Latinx children, out paddling and stuff like that. And it has to be like a partnership. It has to be, I think it has to be a partnership in it. And you also have to know that we are doing it. And you have to go outside the spaces that you typically go. So I know a lot of paddling clubs have been around for a while. So your recruiting stock is the same people that have been going to the club for a while. But a new tool, is social media, Facebook, Instagram, meetups. People are organizing that way. My buddy Kublaka, he unfortunately passed this summer from a kayaking accident at a lake, but he was organizing little hiking trips and stuff like that, and paddling trips. And unfortunately I wasn't able to get a hold of him before that accident happened. But had there been some interest more from our paddling clubs and thinking about diverse spaces, talking Kentucky Refugee Ministries, going to like a Black church, going to like, there's a nonprofit in Louisville that I'm starting to work with called Adelante, and they work with Latinx youth. And they're looking for like outdoor trips and stuff like that for kids. It's just thinking about like the spaces that you go to and how you approach the conversation. Don't come in with a savior complex. Try to talk to people and say like, hey, what are y'all doing? What programming are you doing? Who's into paddling and stuff like that? And also another thing too that I noticed this summer, with everything that happened with BLM and racial injustice, is like a lot of organizations want to swoop in to do something, but like Chev and like Andrea said, it's incubating leadership within those communities so that you have leaders that look like you, not just like, okay, we have these predominantly white organizations that swoop in and and I'm not trying to throw anyone under a bus, but I have to say it, like Wilderness Inquiry, does like their canoe mobile, and they come into, a lot of cities and they pull up with the canoe mobile. It's a great program, but that's what the kids do it once a year. And then it's mostly hosts, like paddling instructors, white folk. What if money was invested? That money is invested to bring in canoe mobile, is invested into training instructors, local instructors to help, do paddling trips. So those are just some of the thoughts that I shared in my session that I moderated. Yeah,
I think that's an important thing to note, is looking outside the places that you normally look to recruit. And my day job is with the National Wildlife Federation, and we are starting to engage more with the faith-based community to increase our engagement with communities of color, rather than going to the traditional conservation route and reaching out to hunters and anglers and the traditional sportsmen to get involved with our work. But it's also thinking about what those communities are facing and how we really want to be helpful, because we can take hunting and fishing into downtown Los Angeles, but if that's not of interest or conservation has no place there, then what's the point? So our focus now is how can we help communities transform in a way that works for them, and how can we utilize our programs in doing that? So what ways can paddling uplift communities in ways that they want to see? So it's going to take conversations and relationship building, and it takes time. I mean, developing those partnerships are not going to happen overnight.
Thank you, Heather. I think we're going to spend about 5 more minutes on this session or this segment, and then move on to hearing from the board, their thoughts. So about 9:15, we'll wrap up this segment.
Hi, I'd like to share a couple of thoughts. I'm Lee Goodnight, Green Cove Springs, Florida. I'm a instructor trainer in canoeing and instructor in kayaking, and I've worked primarily for the last 35 years with the Girl Scouts. Both the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts are pretty diverse organizations, and they both have paddling programs. The Boy Scout Merit Badge pamphlets for canoeing and kayaking are essentially ACA level 2 skills courses with some Boy Scout stuff thrown in, and I use them as the textbooks for my classes for adult Girl Scouts. So getting in step more with the Scouts, and they've already talked about a lot of other youth programs. It's a good way to start, but you gotta make the transition from kids that enjoy paddling at summer camp or maybe a few canoe trips during the year to enthusiastic ACA members. So to bridge that gap, perhaps we could extend free membership to kids up until they're 20, 21 years old, gotten through college and have enough money to spend on extra memberships and that sort of stuff, as a way to feed them into the organization, if you will, once they've become aware of it through their scouting organizations or kids organizations. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, so, another way we should be looking at this too is look at the current organizations or programs that are currently doing this right now. I know Chicago Adventure Therapy, they're doing it. I can tell you, I try my best every summer for the last 10 years to do this work, to go into my community and get people there. And we're going to have to start doing real grassroots level recruiting. What I mean by that is you can't wait for the youth to start coming to us. They're never going to come to you if that's what you're looking for. You got to try to hit the high schools, especially those high schools that are in bad communities or poor communities or whatever you want to describe them as. But you have to go to those high schools and start recruiting from that level. You got to go to the local organization and start requesting the kids to come out. I remember my mentor, who was an AC, not an AC instructor, but it's an ACM member. He used to drive around the hood. He called it the hood. He used to drive around the hood with kayaks on top of his car, walk up to kids and ask them if they want. That's how I got into kayaking. Would ask kids in the community, do you want a kayak? Do you want a kayak? Do you want a kayak? Oh, if you can't swim, I'll get you swim lessons. Don't worry about it. Just come on down. So we have to get to that level of recruiting if we're going to be doing this. If we're going to sit and just all talk, it's not going to get done. We got to get into the communities, get out to the kids, start talking to them when we see them on the streets. That's how it's going to work. And that's where you're going to find the strongest group of kids that are really going to be about this. You're not going to find the ones that are going to walk up to you. They most likely are just looking for a vacation or a play date. But if you want kids to help build a sport and have real impact on their communities, you got to go into that community, you got to get those kids out of there and bring them to the water. And that's how it's going to work. It can't be a half-ass statement thing where we put a bunch of statements and it passes for 6, 7, 10, over 100 years and nothing ever happens. It's got to be real action. And real action to me is going to the communities and recruiting. Real action is figuring out how to apply for grants and get the money to the board so that the board can make appropriate decisions and get the kids access to swimming if that's what it takes to get them out there. You know, we have lakes all around. Figure out how to bring the kids from the inner city to the lakes. It doesn't matter if the socioeconomic situation is different there. We can get poor kids to lakes, but we have to go in there and do the work and find other organizations that are currently doing the work. It might not be kayaking, but find them and ask them for help and be reached out.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Chev. Like, elevate what Laura said in the chat. She said, if you recruited REI and LL Bean, guess who won't come to your program? And we all love REI and LL Bean. But yeah. And it's recognizing, you know, to piggyback on what Chev said, is recognizing like space. Like sometimes, even as like a Black person that's been involved in outdoor recreation most of my life, serving the Air Force, you know, all that stuff, going into an outdoor store can be like a hostile space for me, just by nature of how I look. People, the way customer service might not talk to me as fast because I might not look like I'm whatever. So we have to recognize that like some of the spaces that we exist in as paddling instructors and paddlers are not hostile. Oh, and I wanted to say this too, and sorry if I'm talking so much because I'm a moderator. But we also have to think about our space as in the water, like our put-ins, our takeouts, like particularly like in the South. I'm not trying to throw the South on the bus because there's problematic stuff all around the country. But like Confederate flags, you know, at your put-in, aggressive behavior. You know, there was a gentleman in Indiana that, you know, was beat up by some people, by some white folk, and racial slurs. He was just going on a vacation, like to the lake. So we have to think about like our outdoor spaces and how they have historically been places of pain and misery for Black folk. And we have to know that and reclaim them. And I'm elevating something. This is what we had talked about in my like group. And I have a friend that is an outdoor Afro in Alabama, and I forget the name of the river, but this river was these guys. It was during the civil rights era. They planned like a lynching. They did a lynching, and they went down on this river to plan it. It's where they planned to do this and stuff like that. So she hosted an outdoor Afro paddling event where they reclaimed this space, this river, as like a safe space for everyone. And it was really powerful to acknowledge something, you know, that was hateful was incubated on this river, but then now fast forward to 2020 and it's a space for everyone. So.
Okay, hi, I'm sorry. I've been kind of waiting to see when I can jump in there. I was raising my hand. I didn't know how to really go about this, but I just want to just go back before we get off of this session. There was a comment that was made earlier that made me kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable, only because I think earlier in the conversation, someone very early on said something about swimming and how important learning how to swim is for safety reasons, which I understand 100%. And I do think that, you know, that's a good skill to have and to learn to be, you know, if you want to really be in this water sport world, right? But I don't think that it should be a top priority to say, if we want to have diversity and inclusion for Black and Brown people, they need to learn how to swim first, because I don't think that's a requirement. For me personally, I am not a strong swimmer. I like to say I'm not a swimmer, but I know I can swim. So I just, because I'm not like great at treading water, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can't swim, right? But I feel comfortable enough getting in a paddle, in a kayak or what have you. I feel like I'm a pretty good paddler and I'm pretty new at it, but I know Black people who are great paddlers that can't swim at all. And so it's to say that you have to learn how to swim for them to be comfortable in the water, to do other paddle sports or water sports. I don't think that's accurate. And I don't want all of us here to think that in order to get Black and Brown people out doing these paddle sports, they have to know how to swim first, because that's just going to be a barrier that's going to hold them back, and they won't feel comfortable if they're being told, oh, wait, can you swim? You know, and it's just like, oh, well, damn, excuse my French, but you know what I mean? It's just not, I just don't think it would be the first thing to say, okay, we need to welcome them. Let's first make sure that they can swim. I think the first step would be, let's just see what they want to do. If they want to get in that paddle, give them a vest, right? Let them, if they want to get in that kayak, I mean, give them a vest, give them a paddle, and let them go at it. So that's just something I just wanted to throw in there. But I do think it would be really awesome if the ACA can find a way to fund, communities that have Black and Brown children that really want to learn how to swim, because that's always a good skill to have.
Thank you, Shanae. I appreciate that so much. I was gonna hop in on that earlier, but I didn't want to, I was trying to be reserved as a moderator, but thank you for addressing that. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to, oh, I'm sorry.
So sorry. I was wondering if I could just jump in real quick. So my name is Lily. I, along with my good friend Antoinette Toscano, we founded Diversify Whitewater, an organization based in Colorado now, but we're hoping to expand nationally next year. And Chev was talking a lot about grassroots efforts, and I think we're a really good model to show that two people can make a really big difference in their community with just an idea and outreach. So we basically used Facebook as a platform, and we got sponsors, we got a lot of participants, and we were able to hold 2 completely free paddling events in Northern Colorado this past year. Carla attended our last event, which was held at a state park in Northern Colorado. And it's a more predominantly conservative area, but we were able to bring 115 total people with 80 participants, mostly Black, Indigenous, people of color, and about 40 volunteers. And we took over this lake. And even though it was like a predominantly white area, I think our participants felt really safe because we were able to gather all these people together and teach in a safe environment that was they didn't feel like they weren't the minority, they were the majority. And it was really empowering for me and also for them. And so I think we would love to communicate with the ACA about how we can expand nationally and also how we can partner with you in the future.
Thank you, Lily. Diversify Water has been doing the thing, doing that work, and I really appreciate and love what y'all are doing. Next up, I don't want to say your name wrong.
It happens all the time, so I already know who you're referring to. Nahaji is my name, and I'm with Kat as well. I'm Chicago under Andrea and Laura. And just kind of going off what Carla was saying earlier, as well as Chev, I wrote down this statement here, listening to them speak, especially after Chev. And the thought I had was, quite literally, it wrote out, inclusion includes challenging the stigma of racism and privilege if there's to truly be a multicultural merger. And you kind of have to think about with the American Canoeing Association, that association exists because there are a bunch of white people who love canoeing so much that they created this association to have this all over America, and kind of have to also confront the fact that it is largely a white sport. Yeah, I don't mean to make anyone comfortable making that statement, but it is largely a white sport. And confronting the idea of, first, if we want to make it a more inclusive thing to have, especially young people of color, young Black, brown people, Latino, Indigenous, all of that, we have to confront the fact, first of all, that this is kind of created, first of all, to keep. Essentially, even though it might not have been made to have keep Black people or brown people out, the idea of it was behind, you know, a bunch of white people got together again and, you know, created this association for themselves. So I know we're all talking about how we can make it more comfortable. We just have to first, I think, be able to confront the fact that that's why they was created. Chev was also saying earlier about how he had a mentor, you know, someone that he worked with and passed, who went through, like you said, went through the hood with canoes, you know, on top of the van or the truck or whatever, you know, going into the areas. That's kind of something I think would be more applicable and more helpful. I was sitting here thinking myself how cool it would have been, you know, growing up here in Chicago, to have had some people come into like the local day camp, you know, where the, you know, most of the kids in the neighborhood go to, and say, we're going to give free lessons to all of you kids, instead of, you know, my parents having to seek out an organization like CAT PC or, you know, any other organizations throughout America. So again, even going off what you were saying too about being willing to go into these neighborhoods and offer the, you know, these services and offer these, you know, teaching classes and swimming lessons, all of that. We just have to first confront the fact that it's not necessarily comfortable. It's a white thing in a lot of people's minds, especially young Black and brown people, to even be involved in something like that. So confronting that first and thinking about how we can overcome that hurdle, making it not just a white people thing. It's a fun thing to do. It's something educational. It's something relaxing that you do. It's an enterprising, I think, you know. Confronting that first, I think, would be most helpful.
Thank you, Naj.
Of course.
And we're going to transition to talking to our board, but I want to say something like to that point, like, yes, it was, you know, to white folk on this call, it might be uncomfortable to hear that, but just know that like the Sierra Club, which is like the world's foremost, you know, environmental nonprofit, you know, founded around the same time as ACA, one of their founders was John Muir, and he was racist, and the Sierra Club had to really confront, you know, they had a whole blog and a whole movement they put out to confront their monuments, including him. And they put, I think it was over $6 million towards diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial injustice. So like, if the Sierra Club can do it, ACA, we have to confront that too. So thank you, Naj, for bringing that up. So next up, we're going to hear from our our illustrious, awesome board members.
Thanks, Jerry. So Heather Davis Miller here. I am the board member, and Robin Pope, our board chair, I think is still on. I can't see. Oh, there you are on the second page. So we just wanted to join, to hear how the session went. I unfortunately am a new mom, so I was not able to attend, but I really appreciate hearing everyone's feedback and input. Because before I left, I'm still on maternity leave, and before I went on maternity leave, I put some thoughts down on paper in terms of what we could do as an organization and how we can move this forward as a board. But given that we are a member-based organization, I didn't think it was appropriate for the board to take action without hearing from our members and engaging our members and being a part of this process. So I want to say firstly that when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and added justice, within this conversation, the assumption is that, you know, we're focusing solely on race. And while this is a starting point, if we can move the needle on race, then we can also move the needle on other on other isms that we face, such as sexism and things like that. So I just wanted to call that out because those are things that we'll have to tackle eventually, but I think that race is the elephant in the room, and that's where we need to focus initially. And also, you know, this is the organization itself. You know, we have a limited number of staff, so I think this is going to be a heavy lift, but I think with the help of members and people like you all stepping up and being part of the process, we can do a lot of work and get a lot done. And I don't want to speak too much. And Robin, if you want to share anything, you can feel free to.
Thank you. And to everyone that's on the call, thank you very much for being interested and engaged with this. Jerry and Aaron and Heather, thanks for getting all of this discussion started. Heather asked me to kind of talk about how to get this moving forward within the ACA from a logistical perspective. And because the ACA is a member-based volunteer organization, the first thing to do is get people that are interested. And we've clearly reached that goal. The second thing is to get people in a leadership role that can bring that to whatever you're interested in, to the attention of the ACA's national leadership and to the staff. As Heather mentioned, we have a very small staff. We have, I think, 7 full-time staff members serving 15,000 members. So expecting staff to jump up and add additional responsibilities is going to be really challenging. So we need to have our members involved and make sure that they're speaking on a national level. And we've got that. Heather is taking the point on diversity issues and is on the board, so you've got that voice. And then the final thing is for people to step up and do the work. Making sure that each individual member is kind of deciding what's important to them and moving forward with that. I've heard a lot of discussion about individual groups that are spread across the country. One of the things ACA can help do is make sure that those groups can communicate with each other through a national device and share their successes, share the challenges they face and how they're overcoming those challenges. There's been some discussion in the chat about scholarships. We're a small organization. Scholarships are tough, but working on a local level and helping members submit grants is going to be a way to achieve that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I guess at the beginning of the conversation, the question about how this group is structured, and at least from the board's perspective, this is an informal ad hoc work group with official board representation. Because of some of our bylaws and some of the requirements that are placed on us as a national governing body, that actually gives this group the greatest amount of flexibility and the greatest ability to get stuff done. So this is an official group that's recognized by the board, and I'm looking forward to helping it succeed.
Thanks, Robin and Heather. So let's just spend, I guess, if we can spend some time, and if people want to, what's the word, solicit or ask questions of them.
Sure.
So we can spend some time, I think, give about what do y'all think about, like 5 to 8 minutes for that? Is that suitable?
So I have a question for Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hey, Mark.
Mark from Rhode Island. Just wanted to ask you about the comment about members and grant making or interested members. So what kind of integration with the staff and or the board or other ACA structures would you envision? Like, for example, I have a relationship with LL Bean, and they have a pretty significant philanthropic budget. So if I wanted to explore that further and pursue the possibility of some support from a group like that, how independently would I pursue that? Or how would you envision me keeping the organization in the loop or getting additional support from the organization?
There's several ways that you could do that, and I'm going to defer a little bit to Carrie and Kelsey because they actually manage grants and are funded through grants in part. They probably have more knowledge than I do there. But I think on the basic level, you as an individual can submit for grants to do whatever your granting agency wants to let you do. If you wanted to partner with ACA, there would have to be a much stricter requirement because you'd be working under ACA's nonprofit identification. So there'd have to be some clear financial reporting and clear goals. Right now, we would probably ask you to work through our staff and figure out how to do that. I don't think we're at the point where I can give you a clearer answer than that, though. Kelsey, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And Mark, I've already written a grant to LL Bean
Oh,
for
no
that
kidding.
purpose. And we make their decisions in January. And if we get this money, this is, I wrote it for this purpose, to give scholarships to groups or to individuals for this. So if we get that, I'm gonna throw a little party and then we can all go do the things. But like Robin said, that if you want ACA to essentially act as a pass-through entity, we of course have to adhere to all of the requirements, or in some cases, federal regulations on how to manage that money. But again, that's something that Carrie and I have done a lot and we want to do. And like Robin said, that, you know, there's 2 of us in the education department, and we have high ambitions, but only so many hours in a day. So if you find a grant and you think that your organization or some, you know, of your partnerships that you're with could serve the mission of that money, that funding, I want to help you. I don't have capacity to find all of them all the time, but if you bring it to me, I want to help you. And if a national nonprofit is the method in which you can access it, then I'll help you with it, you know, but
Great.
big goal.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'll follow up with you offline just to find out a little bit more about how it, you know, the nature of the relationship. But I wouldn't be doing something like this by myself. It would be on behalf of ACA. So I would want to work with you and staff.
Well, I also extend that invitation to anyone on this call. If you need my assistance with that, I want to help. But again, if you have other funding sources in your community and you can serve your group or your club or your nonprofit or whatever, I would encourage you to do that. And if you need, you know, a letter of support from us, you know, to back you up, I'd be happy to help with that too. So I guess I just need to know what you need.
So thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. If you want to drop your email in the chat, that'd be awesome.
Yes,
but like I said in the chat, we're gonna have spend some time asking questions of the board. But I really want to hear from people that haven't spoke yet. I know some people are shy. I know Zoom is so impersonal, but I know that there's some awesome, bright minds that have things to say. So if you haven't spoken yet, or spoke or speak or whatever, I'd love to hear you. Share, my friends, share comrades.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Christopher Foreman. I do apologize. I literally just got on this call due to some prior obligations. So I've missed like absolutely everything. Just to give you a little bit of a background on me, I'm from Philadelphia and I've been a part of Philadelphia's only free and open to the public kayaking program that's based out of Bartram's Gardens. We're literally in a park that's right behind one of Philadelphia's low-income housing communities. So we're basically right in the projects running a boating program that sometimes caters up to 400 people per week. And I really would like to kind of like know like how to kind of like keep in touch. So I'm typing something in the chat, you know, for people to like link up with me on Facebook and read a little bit about the community boathouse that we're a part of. But I would really just like to know, like, is there like a Facebook group or something that maybe like we can all join, you know, just to make sure that we're staying kind of in contact. And I would be happy to like spearhead a Facebook group or something like that if that's
awesome. We don't have a Facebook group yet. We have like Paddlers for Diversity that was incubated by the Georgia Canoeing Association off a thread, and but we don't have an official working or Facebook group for this working group. So that's something we can put into the parking lot and put to the top of it, because that is important to have like that connector. So yeah, and we'd love totally. I think we would love your help with doing that. So thank you so much.
Very welcome. I'll definitely I'll get working on it.
Anybody else? We'd love to hear you. People that haven't shared. I'm gonna start calling names. I'm just kidding. I won't do that.
Christopher, do you mind leaving your email in the chat?
I am. I'm going to leave my email. I'm going to leave links to my Facebook page and also links to our community boathouse.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Crystal Skane. I represent the Universal Paddling Committee, and you know, our target across the country is to help educate folks who may not believe, again, that paddling is possible due to disability, visual impairment, hearing impairment, mobility impairment, all those ableism aspects of inclusion. So that's been a national initiative, and we have some of the same challenges with how do we promote the education, how do we market the opportunities, and I think this is a really cool group to be included with. There's a lot of crossover, and I'm happy to listen in and contribute where I can.
Thank you so much. Do you have a question of the ACA board at all? What can they do to help support you? in your programs?
I work with some of the folks on the board in representing I'm currently the chair of the Universal Paddling Committee. So I'm doing what I can to volunteer my efforts and coordinating the efforts of those other instructor trainers across the country. So we are a smaller group yet, and I'll be sure to pass along some of this information and the initiative efforts that are being coordinated here to the members of that committee, and hope that there's great collaboration moving forward.
Thank you so much. And just a reminder to y'all, please drop those emails, bios, stories into the chat. We want to keep up with you. And thank you, Aaron, for taking really amazing notes. I haven't seen them because they're handwritten, but I know they're amazing. Anyone else? I think we
I'm not sure if
just get about like two more minutes. Sophia?
Yeah. I do have a question. I wanted to know if the ACA is doing anything during the off season for paddle sports. Is there anything that can encourage people and introduce them into paddle sports during the winter time, say for example, in climates that are a bit cooler? If there's any indoor facilities that maybe a tour can be created, or maybe some sort of instruction can be given so they can at least start to get their feet in the water, not literally, but you get it. Like they can start getting to know the sport during the off season, and then once it becomes warm again, they can actually execute that on the water. And also, I'm not sure if there's some sort of clinic that can be created where, say for example, every week there can be sessions that are either low cost or free, where it's promoted for everyone, but also specifically for low income or diverse regions, where they can come out, learn, and they're also, like, I would say using social media is a good way to get these people. So creating very vibrant flyers, or getting in contact with people who already are in the outdoors, and they can send it to their friends and send it to their friends. If you don't want to do the footwork, at least with social media, things spread very quickly. So I just want to know if there's something that is in place for off season, and if there are clinics in place around different states that can help with that.
So to answer that, I have to answer a little bit about how ACA manages instruction. ACA very rarely sets up its own instructional programs. Instead, we essentially license instructors. You can think of us as a regulatory board rather than an event providing board. So we do have, we've got about 4,000 instructors, and many of them are involved in winter instructional programs in very cold areas. A lot of those would be indoor rolling programs. I've worked with a program in North Carolina that in the winter does indoor instruction in Olympic-sized pools. So yes, there are a lot of programs, but they're offered more on a local level. And I think the best resource for that, particularly for offering lower cost introductory lessons, is probably through clubs. At the beginning of this discussion, there was a mention that our club programs and state director are important. And I completely agree with that. Having a national organization reaching out to a very local level gets tough. Having a club as a local intermediary seems to help out.
Just want to ask one quick question off of what you said. So those organizations that are already in place that are doing the off-season work, are they also looking to help diversify the paddle sports, or is it like, are they a little separate from what we're talking about now?
Maybe. There's such a range of organizations. I think that there are some, I know that there are some that are very committed to increasing diversity and access. I think there's some that's not even on their radar.
Right, because I think getting them on the same page will probably also help with, further diversifying paddle sports, because for me, off-season paddling is not really on my radar. I feel like when I think about paddling, it's usually during warmer times. So the summer, maybe the spring, but if I'm already doing it during those times, imagine people who are not doing it at all.
Right.
And for them to actually recognize that, hey, maybe there is something I could do off season to occupy my time, I feel like that can also be something, not only just to diversify, but also, it could help with their health. It could help with, just occupying their time. And maybe a job for the youth. So I feel like it could, change so many different things at the same time.
I think you're completely right. ACA actually has received some funds to start competition clubs, and those are going to be, if not all of them probably, but at least some will be specifically targeted to increase diversity and increase access. And I think Heather is going to be speaking with Marsh Jones, the gentleman that's coordinating that, on Thursday.
We had, thank y'all. I mean, we had, I think there is some people, Gerard, and then there was James. So who wants to?
Okay. Yeah, my name's Jerry Hemwood. I'm a paddler in Cleveland. I'm also a rower. So don't hold that against me, but I kind of bring the rowing experiences that I had in high school and college into the picture. And I look at the ACA and I see how relatively little there is of that. And you're now the NGB, Robin, and there is, I believe, a lot of elevation that can take place in the paddling world by having a competition focus. It rises the tide that lifts all boats, so to speak. If you can have a really well done a competitive program, and with that, I suggested, and I talked to Chev separately about having a different category of racing, which is racing that's more accessible to everybody, which is more open water sea kayaking. Have a fixed distance. It's like you have sprint races, flat water sprints and whitewater slalom. Have a short distance mile, one mile, 2 miles, not 26 miles, not 47,000 miles. A race that the average kid can aspire to participating in. That's uniform with everybody. Hey, I'm running a mile. I'm running a half mile. And that's missing right now. And I think if that was introduced, it might sort of bring more people and kids in the city. I grew up rowing in the city of Philadelphia, and awesome to hear what you're doing, Christopher, by the way. I'm going to check it out in Barton Gardens. But so, yeah, I just think that, and I've sent some emails and gotten very good feedback from Beth and from Brett on this idea. Inclusion means having accessible water and having accessible racing. That component will really help a lot. Thank you, James. Or Jerry. Jerry, you got a good spelling of your name. That's how I spell my nickname.
Two first names. Yeah, so we have just time for, I think, one or two more questions, and then so.
In terms of building up the competition side, they're trying to do probably a fairly disastrous start 3 or 4 years ago, and we're really building from scratch. There's definitely plans to have a lot more citizen level races.
Cool.
So my name's Heidi Henkel, and I'm working with a group in Massachusetts where we have a large amount of government grants, and we're working with the city of Holyoke, which is a fairly large city, and we have grants that are specified to people with disabilities, and we have a lot of participants with disabilities and people of color and low-income people and youth, and there's rowing and kayaking, and so there's two different sports going on. And we have a coach who's really a rowing coach, and she's been learning a lot about paddling. I go down there on a fairly regular basis and teach her about paddling. And she's got a bunch of kids paddling, and now she wants to hold sprint races in Holyoke. And she's been asking me about specs about how to hold sprint races, which isn't my area of expertise, but she's really trying to get it going on the competition side. She holds several 10K races every year, which the local community participates in, not just people from her program, but people from the public too, who come from other places. And that's mostly adult, and there's more and more of a push to have kids in it too. I told her about the ACA, and she has no interest in joining the ACA because all she sees it as is another expense. Like, she doesn't really have any concept that the ACA would contribute anything to her program. I've told her about it, but anyway, so I'm sort of wondering, like, how would being involved in the ACA be beneficial to this program? And is there a way to get access for her to become a certified coach through the ACA without it being a whole bunch of money that they don't have budgeted for that? I think it would be great for her to get better training than I can give her, but I think the expense of it is a barrier because it's not something that falls into any of the grants that she has. Anyway, so there's this great club that's not an ACA club, and I don't know how to make ACA relevant to them.
I think ACA in that level can offer two things. One is coaching training, which would be our competition side. And honestly, I'm not a competitive paddler. That side is changing significantly. Rock Shribar is the high performance director, and he would be the person to contact about that. We'll get his contact information, and he's available on the website. In terms of instruction, being able to teach better, the big advantage is a formalized instructional method. And I tell people the old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach, is only half of it. Those who believe that have never taught, and if they did, they didn't do it well. So, going out, learning how to teach and be able to present the information more effectively, particularly at introductory levels, there are more opportunities for scholarship. So I'd say working with ACA can help that. It can give some structure to the club. It can give some competition opportunities.
Robin, I think it's also a good opportunity for this instructor to, if they're hosting races and competitions, she's looking at having access to, finding young athletes and being part of the pipeline that is paving the way to national, local and national competitions and world championships, like being part of that pipeline to help connect athletes with those opportunities to advance within the sport is another valuable opportunity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Crystal, that the pathway to becoming an Olympic athlete starts at a community level competition. And the pathway to that community competition is learning how to paddle.
Thank you all. So this wraps up our question segment, and I'm sure Heather and Robin, if y'all have more questions for them, they will respond via email. I can't say it to the speed of when they will, but I know that their email inbox will be open for those questions. So thank you all so much for sharing those things, answering questions, and thank you all for asking them and stuff. And sorry if I'm rambling. I'm tired. Daylight savings time is like throwing me for like a loop. It's time to abolish it. So next up, we just want to talk about options and next steps for participation in this working group. Erin, do you want to help me with this part?
Sure. So if you haven't thrown your email up, please do. The immediate next step that we're going to take is to send out a survey to everyone here and to the folks who were at the original session, and then also publicly to our larger ACA community. A survey that in large part will be about what our community thinks that our next steps shall be and who would like to be part of the working group. So as Jerry and Heather said, we have just a very small group now, not a lot of people. We need to build that out. We need to identify what strengths that we have. In individual conversations I've had with people, I'm learning about a tremendous wealth of resources and knowledge that we have within our paddling community from you all. But we need to figure out who wants to do the work and then how to contribute to that work. Within the survey, you'll see some of the next steps that we have thought might be possible, but we don't want to make those decisions, just the four of us, on behalf of over 15,000 members and all of the people that we hope would want to be members in the future. So that's an immediate first step here, is to please fill out that survey, get it back to us. Please put your emails in the chat so that we can follow up with you about our next meeting. And we'll be communicating with you via email. And I believe Jerry, did you get that Facebook up?
Yeah, it's up.
Okay.
The keyboard was smoking. It's up.
Jerry's going to put a link in the chat as well with just kind of a landing place with us on Facebook. Don't worry if you don't use Facebook. We will still be in touch with you. You don't have to use Facebook to be part of this group, but it will be kind of a landing place for some of these ideas so that we can have a connection. And someone just asked for an outlined agenda. I think that's a great idea. We're learning as we go. So we're trying to streamline this. We want to be conscious of everybody's time. So keep the communication open. Let us know what we can do better, and we will be in touch with you.
Up in the future, we will have that agenda for everybody. Yeah, so sorry, so sorry about that. So I just want to, like, as we close, is there anything in the parking lot? You know, I always, when I facilitate, I love the parking lot. It's like, you know, everyone's been chattering about this, but we got to keep moving. So we'll put it in the parking lot. So anything else, anything on your heart, your soul, your mind that you want to just unload here in the parking lot?
I just want to say thank you for all of you on the ACA board for doing this. And I mean, it's late, but this just shows how dedicated everyone here is. So thank you for doing this. Looking forward to the next one.
I just want to give a shout out to Erin for, you know, listening and communicating, and to all of you people here too for just being here tonight, sticking it through, and willing to do the necessary work, because it's not about us because we're here already. It's about who's coming behind us. So let's keep that in mind and just keep working hard and try to get more kids and more youth and more people in boats, get them on the water.
If I can say, looking at the chat, there have been a couple things saying how glad people are that ACA is doing this. I'm going to argue that you are doing it. ACA is a membership organization, and by all of you being on this group, you are leading the ACA board. I believe this is something that is morally and ethically the right thing to do. We need to move it forward, and I appreciate you guys helping make that happen. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? I guess I'll say this, like, I mean, this is putting like the board on the spot, but I wonder if one of these goals that we could do at this working group is like to say that the ACA will dedicate a significant amount of its budget on an annual basis to this work. I would love if that's something that we explore. I don't need Heather or Robin to say like we'll commit, because obviously y'all are control like all by yourselves the purse. But I was just love if we could like incubate that conversation. Or
I second that.
I mean, I'm from an organization that's investing millions of dollars from our annual budget into this work. So if we're actually going to see some change, lasting change, at some point, we're going to have to invest financially. So that's all I'm going to say on that part.
Yes.
ACA can certainly invest portions of its budget. Its budget is very, very small, and we could invest our entire budget and it wouldn't be enough to address this. This is going to have to be a volunteer-based effort, unless Kelsey and Carrie don't want to eat it.
What did you say, Robin?
I said if we invest our entire budget, you guys won't be able to eat anymore because we need to pay you. But it is important, but it's got to be more than just what the ACA's current budget is. And there's a note about fundraising. This is definitely something we're going to have to reach out for grants and additional support. And we'll need your help.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for taking the time out to do this. I'm looking forward to next steps and with this process. So thank y'all. And so we will send out an email with the survey. We will have a contact list. There's a Facebook group is up. there. The link is in the chat, but you can Google or go on Facebook, and it's ACA Diversity Inclusion Working Group. So it's up on there. But thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all. And don't forget to vote. Go vote. Yay, America. Go vote.
Yeah, I'd
Already
like,
did.
right?
Cool.
I was going to say, I'm recording this meeting this evening so we can come back in case we miss any important messages and come back and pick it up. And I'm going to leave the meeting up for a few more minutes. I'm going to also save all the contents of the chat. So if you have a comment or something else to put in the parking lot that you didn't get a chance to say, please type it in here and it will go on the record so that we can follow up later. Okay.
It's funny, Kelsey. I forgot that you were like the admin for this meeting. So I was looking for like the end meeting button. And I was like, yo, where is it? It's not on my Zoom. Cool.
Thanks, Jerry.
Good meeting. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Look forward to connecting with you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all. Good night, all.